Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And welcome once again to another edition of the Juice Box. I am Juice Springsteen. Welcome to the show, episode 79. Pretty insane that we've made it thus far. But as always, before we dive any deeper into the Juice Box, you can listen to the Juice Box on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podbean, juicysteen.podbean.com, and of course, Spotify, and now on YouTube as well. Follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen, Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet, and as I said earlier, subscribe to at JuicySteen on YouTube. You will get the entire RSS feed of the show, dating back all the way to the maiden voyage, the first episode of this program. Additionally, any sort of video content that may develop out of this show, or anything that I might be vlogging, what have you, any type of interview maybe that happens on a video call, what have you, those types of things will be uploaded to YouTube, and of course I will update everybody as such when those things do happen, so make sure you keep up with the YouTube additionally. And if you get a chance, if you listen to it on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, rate and review the show. Give it 5 stars, or as I like to say, 5 straws. And it takes a minute and a half to write a little review. Say what you like, what you don't like. As long as there's 5 stars, the actual written review is kind of irrelevant. But it'd be nice if something was there that was slightly positive. But nevertheless, let's get out of the boring minutia of the program. We have some interesting stuff from Dynamite. Of course, we're going to talk about Raw, getting into the King and Queen of the Ring, how close we're getting to that show, as well as AEW's Double or Nothing. Both of those shows taking place next weekend, and rest assured, I do believe there will be 2 episodes of the Juice Box next week predicting both of those shows. Don't know if it'll be solo or if I'll have Mr. Eisenberg, but either way, there will be a couple of episodes dropping into the feed next week for a lot of Memorial Day weekend fun for the pro wrestling world. So, looking forward to that. I think we can kind of get started with the WWE of it all. I kind of might go a little out of order with certain things. I'd like to go over some news and notes, maybe outside of the ring, or maybe not necessarily involved with whatever happened on Raw and SmackDown this past week. Also, we're going to touch on a couple of Ask Juice questions as I tapped into Wrestling Nation, as I always do, to see if we had any interesting or intriguing potential questions, and there were a few, so I will dive into those as well. Quick note, after the UFC show recently in St. Louis, Dana White, of course, had a presser after the show and said that in the future, he mentioned Power Slap as a part of this weekend, where you'd get, in the future we're going to get a weekend where Power Slap is on Friday, you get a UFC show on Saturday night, and then of course you would then get a WWE PLE on Sunday night, which I've been so spoiled now and conditioned with the Saturday night PLEs. I mean, the Rumble, SummerSlam, a lot of these shows happening on Saturday. It's just so much easier to digest. A lot of the majority of people watching, at least I could say so in the States, If they're off on Sunday, that's nice to have a Saturday night. You're not going out and not doing anything. It's cool to have the option. On a Sunday night, it's tough to sell that, stay up later, go to work the next day really tired because you wanted to watch, SummerSlam or whatever. And I mean, we did that for how long? WWE pay-per-views on Sunday night always were the established night, and I loved it, and I still enjoy it. Of course, AEW has been doing Sunday night shows. If there's a holiday, like Memorial Day, it's going to be on a Sunday night, leading into the holiday on Monday. But they also have done shows throughout the weeks. Of course, we had Taboo Tuesday, this Tuesday in Texas. I was a fan, as a WCW fan. The Road Wild pay-per-views always took place on a Saturday night. Saturday night in August, nothing really to worry about in regards to going to school. It was summertime. It was just great to have it as an option on Saturday nights. So when they brought them in, and AEW as well has had some Saturday night shows, I just think they have a different energy. UFC has been doing Saturday night shows for, I think, since the beginning. So, it's not like they are doing anything out of the ordinary by having a Saturday night show. But I think it would be really cool to do to have, a UFC WWE weekend. Maybe I had brought up potentially Pittsburgh purely because WWE has had 10 pay-per-views in Pittsburgh and a total of 3 UFC events coming through the Steel City, but never actually a pay-per-view. So I think it would be quite intriguing to get a double billing of the two. As well, let's get into some other random notes here as I scroll through the week that was my Twitter. Something that was really cool that I did see was, of course, the Wrestling Club, a special club where these kids in a school get to watch wrestling for maybe it's an hour. I'm not really sure. What a great club and idea this is, and I wish growing up we could have had this outside of me and Matt Presto just discussing wrestling every day. It would have been cool to have a class where a lot of us could get together, watch the wrestling of the week prior, or a PLE or what have you, and get to experience it together. I think some of those kids got to go to WrestleMania this past year, which is really cool after a bunch of funding for that got supported by some wrestlers. But Willow actually stopped by, the TBS champion stopped by for just an awesome appearance there at the Wrestling Club, and so many kids just went berserk for that appearance. And Willow's killing it. We'll get into it as we discuss the AEW of it all, but I think Willow has really come into her own as a character. I liken her to a Sami Zayn, as it were, just a great babyface. It's believable, an underdog of sorts, and even though she's champion, I would say she's the underdog going into her match with Mercedes Moné at Double or Nothing, even though Willow powerbombed Moné through the contract signing table this past week on Dynamite. So you might think of it as, oh, well, she might have the advantage, but there's also a week left of build for the show. So who really knows how that's going to turn out? We'll have the predictions for that next week, of course. There were news and notes that Jesse the Body Ventura, former WWE wrestler, commentator, WCW commentator, governor of Minnesota, could in fact come back to WWE to return. Apparently some negotiations were in place. I took a little bit of issue with Jonathan Coachman's tweet, who said, "For what reason? Seriously, for what reason? History of wanting money for breathing. I worked with him in the XFL. He made $100,000 per game and couldn't be bothered to study or know the players. He's been gone for 35 years. Someone explain what he would bring at 72 years old, which, to be honest, sounds incredibly bitter. And I said I think he could be a valuable asset in regards to vintage content for Peacock or some of the documentaries that they do for A&E. I said potentially, for something on the current product, I doubt he would really be involved on screen. But back in '09, for an episode of Raw, Jesse and Vince were on commentary, kind of hearkening back to their late 80s, early 90s commentary days. And I thought it was a really cool throwback when they did that. Again, I'm not saying Jesse Ventura needs to be on TV every single week, but to say that he would have no value at all, I think is a little bit of sour grapes from the coach, who always says he doesn't want to be involved in pro wrestling, but, at least within WWE ever again. But I do believe he has a show talking about wrestling now, so he's, wanting to get a piece of the pie in some regard. So, I mean, I don't really necessarily think, he's totally out of being in wrestling. And when you make comments like that, I just find it a little hypocritical and funny. But I don't know. I think Jesse Ventura would be an interesting... There could be a lot worse people that they would sign for, a little appearance or what have you. But, I mean, come on. Yeah, let's get into Raw. This was an interesting show. Like I said, we are really kind of honing in now on the King and Queen of the Ring semi-finals. I'll go over the brackets here in a moment, but we had Jey Uso versus Ilya Dragunov, Kofi versus Gunther, Shayna Baszler versus Io Sky, Lyra Valkyria versus Zoe Stark, and then Becky versus Dakota Kai. Of course, Drew McIntyre kicked off the show. When, Drew kind of cut down Priest here. You have a very inspirational story, he said. You just shouldn't be the world champion. I'm kind of torn on all this. I know that CM Punk and Drew McIntyre clearly have a score to settle. Potentially at SummerSlam, I would say that at this moment, you are probably going to get Drew McIntyre, whether it's one-on-one or whatever the case, probably winning the world title at Clash of the Castle in Glasgow. Excuse me. In Glasgow. And if that's the case, I could, maybe he loses it to Punk at SummerSlam. I don't know what they're planning with Punk. I'm assuming he'll be ready to wrestle by SummerSlam. And I also don't think that a title is necessary for the feud to be successful or succeed at a level that WWE would be happy with. I will get to the guy needs a title or the title needs the guy as we talk about the main event of the show. So, yeah, Drew McIntyre, though, has just been on fire. In-ring promos, his Twitter social media presence has been really, truthfully unmatched. And like I said, I just see an absolute, there's absolutely going to be a collision course set for Punk and McIntyre. It's just, when does it take place? How do they get there? I know it's easy to say, well, they've had this feud now, and Punk cost Drew the title at Mania, and yeah, but that has happened already. What will be the catalyst for the particular match that they eventually do have? Is it going to be as simple as Drew gets the title? Punk is wanting to get a shot, but does he have to earn one? Does Drew feel like, what, let's just do this match. I hate your guts. Let's do a match. I don't know. I don't know what the right way to go about it will be, but I'm sure WWE has a plan. The big plan that they had for WrestleMania too, with The Rock and Roman and all that. And that kind of blew up in their face, but it worked out, I think, in the end. But we did have Io Sky advancing in the Queen of the Ring tournament. Gunther, it took a bit, but he did defeat Kofi Kingston to advance in the tournament. Chad Gable, he is getting more and more agitated with the Alpha Academy every single week. Where he had Akira Tozawa go against Bronson Reed to kind of soften him up for the triple threat match happening at King and Queen of the Ring. Otis is going to go against Sami Zayn to kind of soften Sami up again before the triple threat match at King and Queen of the Ring. And, as he's berating Maxine Dupree, he's also simultaneously showing some interest in getting Ivy Nile under the tutelage of his own volition. And I also think, it's no shock to anybody of Ivy Nile being a part of that when the Creed brothers have been kind of in the Chad Gable realm of maybe I'm going to help these guys out and be a part of Team Gable, Team Angle, Team Gable. I definitely think it's something that they could parlay for sure. We had Samantha Irvin welcoming Lillian Garcia to get a introduction of a match, which is really, really cool. Lillian hasn't aged a bit. She's still got the pipes of Lillian Garcia from the Ruthless Aggression era, and it was just awesome to see her belt out the introductions on Raw, especially here in 2024. Bronson Reed, of course, got the win over Tozawa. An interesting point here to be made. Karrion Kross told Kofi, there's always time to turn things around, which kind of left Kofi befuddled. Is Karrion Kross trying to recruit Kofi? Is it a new day for Kofi? Will Xavier be left in the dust? Is this a swerve and Xavier is going to join Karrion Kross? Will we get the New Day exploding at a future PLE? A lot going on there. I'm not sure what the intentions are, but I do like the prospect of potentially the New Day. I wouldn't even say breaking up, but drifting apart, having a potential rift. The Karrion Kross involvement intrigues me because although he's very intriguing and, the Authors of Pain are intriguing, I'm not sure the Final Testament has done a lot thus far. Of course, they also didn't win at WrestleMania, which kind of stifled them. But I like the potential of Karrion Kross saying, hey, I'm going to try to influence this guy. I'm going to try to, bring in some more talent to my group, or I'm going to show this guy what it's like on a real team. Maybe just wants to cause dissension between the New Day. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm intrigued. I will say I'm intrigued. Lyra Valkyria defeated Zoe Stark and will take on Io Sky in the Queen of the Ring. We had a fatal four-way for the number one contenders for the World Tag Titles. Of course, that was won by the Judgment Day. So McDonough and Balor are going to get another shot at the titles. Sami Zayn, Otis, it was what it was. Sami gets the win, and I hope that if we do get this Chad Gable, Creed Brothers, Ivy Nile thing cooking, and that's what they want to roll with, if that's going to be what they do, and we don't have the Alpha Academy as it once was with Maxine, Tozawa, Otis, I almost said Otis. If Otis can go back to that, lovable babyface character, let him lean into the Chris Farley of it all. I think Otis is an incredibly, incredibly entertaining talent, and there's a lot left there. I think there's a lot to be said there, a lot more to be given. Remember, this is a guy who did win Money in the Bank, but it's almost like we don't talk about that anymore, which is kind of fascinating. But I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with the Gable Academy, all those types of issues. Who goes where? Do we get a blow off of sorts? Does Otis Tozawa, bring someone in to go against the Creeds? I don't know. It just seems like Chad Gable is causing quite the rift between former partners of his and, of course, the new talent that he's trying to persuade to being, somewhat of a team for him in the future. Becky Lynch wins via DQ over Dakota Kai. But, of course, Liv Morgan was the person to interfere. Cost them a clean finish there. And it was what it was. So, I will mention this little interesting nugget. The Judgment Day get the victory over the New Catch Republic, the Creed Brothers, and the Authors of Pain. All teams that I have mentioned already in the show outside of the New Catch Republic. Which I don't mind. I don't mind that team either. But they win the title number one contender match. They go to the back. And, it's asked of Dom from Damien, oh, everything cool and everything, I don't know, everything cool with you and Rhea. And it was barely even uttered by Priest, that phrase about, how Rhea and Dom are doing. As soon as he stopped that phrase, McDonough and Balor interrupted and said, oh, we got another shot at the titles, and oh my God, here we go. And it's the small detail of a story that clearly has a lot more to go, and I am waiting for the inevitable Liv Morgan, Dom, Rhea, not love triangle, but just break off into Liv and Dom, which will get the Liv Rhea match at some point. I'll mention this. We had the backstage segment with Becky and Liv, where Becky hit potentially one of the roughest looking punches in the history of pro wrestling. However, I will wager it's a better working punch than Shane McMahon. So, that's not saying much, but it's saying something. So the main event. This was something that's honestly caused an incredible rift between, I don't even know who is it. Just Jey Uso fans? Is it just fans of WWE that are annoyed with how Jey Uso is being presented? Is it Ilya Dragunov fans that are really brought into the fray here? What really is it? But Jey Uso gets the victory over Ilya Dragunov. And again, this is coming off Backlash in Lyon, where clearly Jey Uso was the most popular guy there outside of, Cody. And he's got the Firefly entrance. He's got the yeet. He's got the hand motions. Pat McAfee's on his side. The glasses. Everything is aces for Jey Uso. And he wins this match against Ilya to set up Gunther and to set up Jey Uso and Gunther. A lot of fans, as I mistakenly just said, were hoping and clamoring to see Ilya and Gunther, which those two had one of the greatest matches, I think, in recent memory for the NXT UK title or the WWE UK title. And I was like, oh, well, now these guys are in this tournament. It's clearly set up to where they're going to have a one-on-one match to, have the semifinal match. Who knows where it's going to end up, but I'm sure they'll have a great match. They'll set it up amazingly. It'll be nice to see this TV audience get a match like Gunther and Ilya. But then Jay wins. Jay pins Ilya clean. And there was an uproar. Jey Uso doesn't deserve this match. How could Ilya lose this match? It was supposed to be Dragunov and Gunther on free TV to get the exposure of Dragunov, to show what Gunther and Ilya can do in the ring together. What a disgrace to the pure pro wrestling of Ilya Dragunov to have him lose to a guy like Jey Uso. Jey Uso just does super kicks. The yeet thing has ruined Jey Uso. Blah, 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 blah. Here's my thing. Jey Uso is immensely over. Like I said, in Lyon, he was probably the most over guy outside of Cody Rhodes, who I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this. Cody Rhodes is the WWE Undisputed Champion. So it's a pretty big deal for Jey Uso to have that type of prestige right now. Former tag champ, he's main event Jey Uso. Everything is really solid in Jey Uso's world right now. So much is brought up in the realm of, throughout the history of wrestling. Does the guy make the title? Does the title make the guy? The countless lists of look at all these guys who have never won a world title, and it's like Roddy Piper and it's Scott Hall, and it's these guys that never won that world title but are legends in their own right. And I come at it from this angle. Those guys never needed a world title to be over or to have this legacy status, to have the prestige of a champion. All those guys are pretty much, if not all of them, Hall of Fame worthy, if not already in the Hall of Fame, without having a world title reign, And I'm not going to sit here and say Jey Uso is automatically a Hall of Famer. I would wager that both the Usos will get in the Hall of Fame one day. But it's clear right now that it's main event Jey Uso. It's his time to be at the top of the mountain right now, outside of being a champion. He's got the machine behind him. He's got Yeet. He's got everything. He's got the crowd in the palm of his hand. He's got the machine of the WWE saying, look, we're going to try to make this entrance that happened in Lyon happen in the States. We want the fans to be fully invested in this guy. This is a guy we believe in. Jey Uso does not need a world title to be this over, because he's this over and he's not champion. So that should tell you everything you need to know. However, I think something, is just because that could be true. Jey Uso doesn't need a world title to be super over, popular, what have you. That doesn't mean that he can't go further in a tournament just because he doesn't need to win any sort of championship or what have you. And King of the Ring is not a traditional title per se. Of course, it's the King's crown. Maybe they'll get a world title opportunity down the line, although Jey just had one against Priest in Lyon. And to be fair, do I think Jey Uso's going to defeat Gunther next week? No. Even if Jey Uso does, who's to say he would even win the actual tournament, in Saudi Arabia? I don't know that either. But to say that Ilya needed it, deserved it, should have been there, how dare you? Jey Uso doesn't deserve it. All this garbage. It's ridiculous. Jey Uso is a guy that absolutely deserves a chance like this. Absolutely deserves an opportunity to face Gunther in the semis of a huge tournament like this. He's main event Jey Uso. He's had the opportunities, but he's earned the right to have those opportunities. He's earned the right to have more of those opportunities. He's a guy that's selling merch like crazy. He's a guy that WWE clearly believes and trusts. And that's not to say that they don't believe or trust Ilya, but his time will come. Look, wait for Bash in Berlin in late August. Maybe you'll see Ilya and Gunther for the World Heavyweight title. I absolutely could see something like that happening. Be patient. Let it play out. That being said, Jey Uso doesn't need a world title to be who he is. And I don't think that winning King of the Ring even necessarily, I think it's a nice compliment. It'd be a nice comparative, quote-unquote, title to have if he doesn't ever win a world title. If he wins King of the Ring, all right, Owen Hart won King of the Ring, never won the world title. And I think that's a similar type of scenario that we're living in now. So, just wanted to dispel any of the garbage over the Jey Uso winning this match. It was like people thought it was the worst booking decision in the history of booking. And I'm like, he's main event Jey Uso. Like, he's not just some random guy. He's been doing this for a while now. He's a hugely over guy. He's so popular. Okay, then like what are we fighting over it for? You want him to say yeet, you want him to have this big moment. Not everybody can have a world title match. Not everybody can be in the finals of the King of the Ring or the semis of King. It just doesn't happen. Jey Uso's earned it. This is his moment. Good night and good luck. So, Jey Uso gets the match. He gets the win. His earring practically looked like it came off from the brutality that Dragunov had there. But we're going to get Gunther, Jey Uso next week. Let's look at the brackets. Tonight on SmackDown, Carmelo Hayes, Randy Orton, and LA Knight versus Tama Tonga. The winners of those will face off, of course, on May 24th, next week's SmackDown, to go home for King and Queen of the Ring. And then we'll get the winner of Gunther and Uso versus the last man standing of those four. And can't wait to see how it turns out. If I had to guess right now, it's tough. I could see Gunther and Randy Orton. I could see Gunther and LA Knight. If it's not Gunther, I could see Jey Uso and Randy Orton. I could see Jey Uso and LA Knight. Dare I say, could you imagine Jey Uso, Tama Tonga for the King of the Ring? Maybe Ilya costs Gunther his match. Have you ever considered that? Have you considered that Gunther, is above King of the Ring? Not to say that it's beneath him, but maybe Gunther doesn't need to win King of the Ring and will get that world title opportunity at some point anyway. So you further that, you get a Ilya interference, you get more out of it. That could happen. Why not? Let it play out. On the Queen of the Ring side, as of right now, we are getting Nia Jax, Jade Cargill. Winner takes on the winner of Bianca Belair and Tiffany Stratton. SmackDown tonight. Other side of the bracket, Io Sky versus Lyra Valkyria. I would wager Io Sky wins and goes to the finals of Queen of the Ring. Additionally, on this show, we're going to get Becky Lynch versus Liv Morgan for the Women's World title. Sami Zayn, Chad Gable, Bronson Reed, triple threat for the Intercontinental title. And made official last week on SmackDown with a contract signing tonight on SmackDown. Logan Paul, Cody Rhodes, champion versus champion match. However, I'm unsure if the U.S. title's on the line, if the undisputed WWE title's on the line, if both titles are on the line, if no titles are on the line. I have no idea. We will find out tonight for sure in the contract signing what is actually going on, what stakes there will be. I think ultimately it will just be Cody's WWE title on the line, which I think is fine. There is a question about the outcome of that match in Ask Juice, and I will touch on that as we get there. But so that was Raw. You know, I said this on Twitter. I said Jey Uso doesn't need a world title to sustain his popularity and gravitas as a main eventer. So the King of the Ring is the perfect distinction for him. I've been saying it for a while now. I think he could easily win the Rumble next year, and if he would, end up doing that, I don't think he needs to win the world title even to stay in the main event scene. So let's just see what happens. I'll say it again. Let it play out. So let's get into the AEW of it all. A very interesting Dynamite this past week. I was pretty entertained, for sure. I would say, that for once, I felt that all of the storylines that will be taking into effect with matches, culminating at Double or Nothing next week, I feel like really got built up well. They got more in depth, more stuff happening, getting closer to next week's pay-per-view than maybe ever in AEW's history. This was a full episode of Dynamite that really tackled the storyline pieces of it all, and I feel like actually helped build the Double or Nothing card in a way that they have not been doing. So let's get into that. I'll talk about the Double or Nothing card. We'll finish out with some Ask Juice. We open up with Mox, Bryan Danielson versus Kyle Fletcher and Jeff Cobb. This was a chaotic start. The Bryan Danielson's music kept playing the entire time, very reminiscent of New Jack, who, of course, unfortunately passed away 3 years ago this past week. So, cool little homage to New Jack there. Danielson and Moxley get the win. It was nice hearing Wild Thing once again for Moxley's entrance. His entrance is truly, truly one of a kind. We had the Young Bucks versus Matt Sydal and Christopher Daniels. Young Bucks get the win, and of course, they fire Christopher Daniels after the match. A severance for 30 days. Had security escort him out of the building. The crowd was kind of indifferent. I'll tell you, the ratings weren't very nice. Under 700,000 viewers for AEW this week. Can't say it's great. Look, the Celtics were on. The NHL playoffs, the NBA playoffs are in full effect right now. It is very difficult to get a strong rating for any wrestling currently, so it's understandable, but under 700,000. Can MJF come back soon? Can Mercedes Moné wrestle at Double or Nothing so we can see her wrestle on Dynamite and you can promote it? Please, something other than these lower ratings that they have been consistently getting lower every week. We, of course, had an interesting piece of business. During this match, Jack Perry was the commentator. As he leaves the announce table, he pours a woo energy all over Tony Schiavone. And I felt that it was Jack Perry getting rightful revenge on Tony for when Tony laughed at Bobby Heenan when Medusa sprayed Bobby with the Nitro Cologne back at Halloween Havoc in 1999. I remember Tony being just, he was tickled seeing that happen to Bobby. Bobby was not happy. He was pissed. Smelled terrible. It's Nitro Cologne. How great could it smell? And I felt this was a little bit of justice for that. So as a WCW fan, I appreciated that. There was a Reebok Pumps commercial for the new Young Bucks Reebok Pumps. I'm a big fan of the Reebok Pump shoe. I remember when John Cena always had them and would pump them up to get hyped during his matches. I always felt they were a really cool throwback shoe. And I'm curious to see how well they sell. Had it been, 2016, 2017, I probably would have been waiting in line for these immediately. But not these days. I will be out on those. So, they look cool, though. I won't deny that. Swerve Strickland versus Brian Cage in the world title eliminator match. Swerve gets the win. And then we get Christian coming out. Really taking out Swerve here. And this was kind of brutal. There was some blood involved. Because, Christian gets in the ring and Swerve basically, they have this, the numbers game, and Swerve gets cut open, and as he's bleeding from above his eye, Christian has this photo of Swerve and his child, and I believe his wife, and proceeded to wipe the blood off Swerve's face with the photo. Pretty gruesome stuff. A great way to forward the storyline for their match at Double or Nothing. So I'm hyped to see where that goes, as it now truly is a blood feud. Chris Jericho came out after Hook, had a squash match. Man, look, Dynamite had a terrible rating, but guess who had the highest segment? Chris Jericho. And Big Bill, Ricky Starks apparently seemingly on his way out of AEW. That's why Big Bill is pretty much in the slot that he's in now, not really working with Starks, of course, at the moment. So, looking forward to seeing Starks in WWE. I'm sure it'll happen soon. He's really close friends with Cody Rhodes, so I'm sure that the texts are going rampantly back and forth between the two. If that is the case, if Ricky Starks is truly on his way out of AEW, but we shall see. But I like the storyline progression, of course, with Swerve, like I mentioned, the Hook and Jericho of it all. I believe Hook has to wrestle a gauntlet match to get a shot at Jericho. I believe that's what it was stated there. So we'll see how that plays out as well. Maybe there has to be some sort of match at the pay-per-view, you'd think, between the two. Toni Storm defeated Harley Cameron. It was what it was. But Toni Storm gets the win, and I'm looking forward to her match against Serena Deeb. I think it'll be an underrated match on paper, and I do believe it's going to put forth quite the actual in-ring match. Given 8 to 10 minutes, I think they could put together something solid, but we'll see. Like I said, that Swerve interaction, Killswitch and Nick Wayne brutalizing Swerve, reminiscent of when Swerve beat up Nick Wayne in his wrestling ring in the gym, like 10 minutes down the road from where they were actually at in Seattle there. Like I said earlier in the Juice Box, we had Willow and Mercedes Moné. With the contract signing, a lot of promo here. I'll tell you what, man. I'm kind of over Mercedes Moné talking. She came in what, 2 months ago, like March 13th, something like that, and all she's done is promo work, talking, maybe getting a little bit physical, but mostly just promos. And it's not that she's awful at promos, but when you do it almost every week, or at least every time she's out there, she's talking, it's not your strong point. It's not something that you really should be trying to hone in on if you're AEW. And if she's not clearly cleared, obviously she's not yet, I guess you're stuck. But why for 2 months are you going to do this when she could just have come in a month later? And because the ratings haven't really helped her out, Her being on the show has not helped the ratings I would say that they would hope for, at least out the gate. Maybe she wins the title. Maybe she wrestles on Dynamite more. Something has to happen for fans to be truly invested in seeing Monet week to week outside of promo work. Either way, Willow puts Mercedes through a table. I think we'll get we'll get some sort of rebound from that, a reaction from that next week on Dynamite as we head into Double or Nothing next weekend. Main event, though, of course, we knew it was going to be a long overrun, and it was. Okada, Dax Harwood for the AEW Continental title. Okada gets the win, and the Elite came out, beat up Dax. Wheeler tried to help. Bryan Danielson tried to help. Of course, it was announced that Eddie Kingston will not be wrestling in Anarchy in the Arena. Unfortunately, he is sidelined with an injury. A lot of the injuries going around across pro wrestling in both AEW and WWE. So hopefully Eddie Kingston heals up soon and gets back out there sooner than later. But with 3 guys in the fray, they needed a 4th. And in Seattle, who else would help attack the Elite and add themselves to Anarchy in the Arena to be on Team AEW? None other than a guy who not only wanted to climb Mount Everest, but was only stymied in that ascent by getting hit by a damn bus and breaking his ankle. One Darby Allin. This man is insane, and I'm sure Anarchy in the Arena is the perfect vehicle for, hopefully not a bus, perfect vehicle for Darby Allin to cause chaos, throw his body around again. Look, I hope he just, not that I hope he gets injured, but I hope he can keep himself away from Mount Everest for a while. It is a dangerous, dangerous situation. I was nervous when that was first a thing that he announced, and getting hit by a bus was maybe a blessing in disguise in that regard. He doesn't have to necessarily do it so soon, but I like the addition. I wanted Hangman Adam Page. I don't know where he's at, if he's injured. I know he's in storyline suspended by the Elite, but I thought this would have been a perfect moment to get him back in the fray. But hey, Darby Allin's just as good. Will we see some sort of turn? Not sure. But if someone turned on Team AEW and joined the Elite, or Tony Khan turned, I think there's something going on with the Anarchy in the Arena match for sure. So that I'm very much looking forward to. But I thought it was a really good show. Of course, we also had Malachi Black taking the wedding ring off of Adam Copeland. Potentially is just mind games, but he did accept the challenge. Barbed wire steel cage match, Double or Nothing for the TNT title. If you're unfamiliar with the barbed wire steel cage, it's a regular steel cage match with barbed wire at the top to prevent escape. Most notably, there are 2 barbed wire steel cage matches that I can recall. First of all, uncensored WCW Uncensored 1999, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, barbed wire steel cage match. And then No Way Out 2005 in Pittsburgh, even though I was not there and I also didn't watch the show live. It was the show that kind of piqued my interest back into wrestling after being away since WCW folded in March of 2001. Due to the fact that I heard a spot on the radio being like, No Way Out, it's a barbed wire steel cage match in Pittsburgh. I was like, what the hell? A barbed wire cage match? This is nutty. That's all it took. I became a fan of Cena. I was all in. I was invested in the product again. And I haven't looked back for almost 20 years now back into pro wrestling. So shout out to the barbed wire steel cage match. Looking forward to Adam Copeland and Malachi tearing each other up in that. Double or Nothing card here. Adam Copeland, Malachi Black, barbed wire steel cage, TNT title. The Elite, Jack Perry, the Young Bucks, Okada versus Dax, Cash, Danielson, and Darby Allin, Anarchy in the Arena. Swerve Strickland defends the AEW World title against Christian Cage, Toni Storm defends her women's world title against Serena Deeb. Willow Nightingale defends the TBS title against Mercedes Moné. And Will Ospreay challenges Roderick Strong for the AEW International title. That will be a fantastic match. They had a backstage involvement, and Will Ospreay, like I have been saying for weeks now, is on fire. He's one of the most popular guys in AEW, if not the most popular. And his charisma, his mic work, his promo skills are really improved than I would have ever given him credit for. And I'm thrilled that he's getting this spot week to week to showcase such, because his matches on pay-per-view, Takeshita a couple of months ago at Revolution, Bryan Danielson, I mean, at the last show, good Lord, Dynasty was that where that last match took place, Danielson and Ospreay. Unbelievable match there. So we'll see if we can have another banger with Roderick Strong in a couple of weeks. Let's close out the show with a couple more tidbits outside the ring, and then we'll do some Ask Juice. It's reported from the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani, the chairman of Saudi Arabia's General Entertainment Authority, Turkey. Did I say Turkey? Am I out of my mind? Maybe I'm thinking about Turkey. Turkai Al-Shika said that there are actually some talks that the Royal Rumble and potentially WrestleMania could take place in Saudi Arabia in either 2026 or 2027. So maybe Royal Rumble 26 or 27, and potentially WrestleMania 42 or 43 could take place in Saudi Arabia, which would be unprecedented. Of course, Vegas gets Mania next year. I would say London is in play for 42. Same with Minneapolis. Same with Atlanta. For Mania 43, I'd say Nashville could be in play. Maybe more so for 44. But Saudi Arabia getting a WrestleMania would be unbelievable. And I would love to see the contrast of fans, to see how many fans travel there for that. Unless it would just be more of the fans locally like they've had for these other Saudi shows. I'm fascinated by that. I would say a Royal Rumble event is more likely, considering Saudi Arabia did the greatest Royal Rumble, which gave us 50 competitors, and of course the Titus O'Neil slip, trip, and fall under the ring. An amazing moment, to say the least. So we'll see. Outside of that, not too much else outside the ring. I did get to watch the Dark Side of the Rings for Brutus Beefcake and the Sandman. Both were fantastic. Brutus Beefcake, say what you want, make fun of the gimmicks. I know I have, but the Butcher being in the main event of Starrcade 94, Zodiac, Beefcake, the Disciple. Look, being best friends with Hulk Hogan can pay dividends. Why wouldn't you take any opportunity that comes from that? And he has. And damn it, he was over as Brutus Beefcake. So I'm not going to be critical of him for that. I feel like he's absolutely someone that gets a bad rap. Not the greatest in the ring, but the charisma is off the chart. And I thought his character as Brutus Beefcake really was strong. Not sure if it was worthy of defeating Mr. Perfect in his first loss. I'm fond of the WCW characters: the Butcher, Booty Man, Zodiac, Disciple, the Man with No Name. I mean, a plenty of names for the guy. I'm fond of the WCW characters, but very interesting Dark Side of the Ring. The parasailing accident was nuts. Surprised he's even alive. Speaking of, Sandman's was insane. It's about as everything I expected, honestly, from a Dark Side of the Ring. Sandman's a great character. He was pretty much the everyday guy's wrestler. Before the match, he was smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer, making himself bleed before the match, wearing sweatpants to the ring, but an amazing aesthetic, an amazing entrance with Enter Sandman, of course. And I loved everything about Sandman. So I felt it was a very intriguing Dark Side of the Ring. I felt for his family, but Sandman did seem like a family guy, you know. He tried to stay in his kids' lives as much as he could. Brought his son into the fray with the Raven storyline back in '96, which is pretty controversial back then. Of course, his wife was a part of that, now ex-wife, and she was interviewed. But Sandman lived his dream, you know. And I don't really ever fault anybody for living out their dreams. Those are sacrifices that they had to make, but you really get one chance at this thing, you know, life. So if you're gonna go for a dream, if you feel like you have to make some sacrifices, those are decisions that you have to come to terms with. And Sandman, although maybe, you know, definitely regrets some of the ways he acted and treated people, or how he was family-wise, I think he's probably overall happy with the career that he has had. So I thought those were both great episodes, for sure. Let's get into Ask Juice to close out the show. Most of these came from Wrestling Nation. Let's get into it. Could a Logan Paul WWE title victory at King and Queen of the Ring work? Or would fans turn on it instantly? Let's just assume that the WWE title's on the line. Right? With the contract signing tonight, we don't know. Of course, if Logan Paul were to win the world title right now off Cody, the fans would be incensed. It would be insane. They would boo the hell out of it. It would be an awful decision. Cody, of course, won't hold the title forever, but to hold it for 2 months and then lose it, or for honestly a month, and lose it to Logan Paul. Not saying Logan Paul doesn't deserve a world title in his future, but he's already U.S. champ. He's defending that sparingly. It's just not the right call right now, so the fans would hate it. I think Logan Paul should and probably will win a world title in his future, and will absolutely probably earn and deserve that accolade. But this is not the moment, and this is not the time to do it. Ask Juice, do you feel like it's an easy layup for WWE to bring back Cyber Sunday / Taboo Tuesday? Even as for NXT, I'm sure they can craft it if they're worried about it getting hijacked. They've brought back so many other concepts, and in the world of social media, it seems like a no-brainer. I've been saying this for a while. You know, they brought back WCW entities. They brought back Great American Bash, Halloween Havoc. They brought War Games into the fray. They've done so many things, nostalgia-wise. They've brought back Vengeance. There's a name of a team now, the Judgment Day. Backlash is a prominent PLE now. All these things being considered, especially in the realm of social media, where you wouldn't necessarily have to work the polls and say, oh, well, this person definitively won. But you could make the choices such that you might not have to work the polls. And I think a Taboo Tuesday show, I would make it Cyber Saturday, you know, because Tuesday you're probably not going to run a show. Although I'd love for it to be there for the nostalgia factor, because Taboo Tuesday was an interesting concept. But Cyber Sunday even, I think it's a layup. It's an absolute layup. And I hope that they would bring something like that back and consider it. I'm not sure they would, but I think it's a great idea. And I think it'd be fun to have the interactivity. WWE's all about the social media presence now, and they have, you know, WWE Speed, which is an exclusive purely for Twitter, and it's just 5-minute matches or less on Twitter. Like, you could do so many things if they really honed in on it and really wanted to give it a shot. I think they could have one hell of a PLE featuring voting from the fans based in a Taboo Tuesday type deal. So I'm all for it, TBH. What's one gimmick that we have seen in the past that would not work in 2024? And I cannot say Muhammad Hassan, which of course that character got... Wow. That character really had a lot going for it until real life events, unfortunately, rightfully so, caused WWE to kind of take the character away. It was just bad, incredibly bad timing, and they, I think, made the right move. But, what are you going to do? A gimmick that we've seen in the past that would not work in 2024. Honestly, I don't know how else to put this, but the first thing that came to mind, and it's not even a gimmick, it's just like a piece of the show, would be Big Dick Johnson, the oiled up character that would come out and either get caned by Sandman, shout out Sandman, or piss off Vince McMahon, and I don't know. I don't know if that would play. I also am thinking maybe segment-wise, Kelly's expose, her extreme expose. I doubt that would play. Talk to me in 2025 when they go to Netflix. I think anything is possible. What is the second greatest sitcom of all time? Well, if assuming I'm going to say Seinfeld's number one, I don't know. I don't know. To be fair, I'd say Frasier's got to be up there. Cheers is pretty good, but Frasier is a really great show. So I would suggest Frasier. If you haven't seen it, it's a spin-off from Cheers with a character from Cheers, of course, which was took place in Boston, but Frasier takes place in Seattle. It's an extension of Cheers, but Frasier's a great show. It's a smart show, fun show to watch. So I say Frasier. When's the Juice Box Seinfeld Trivia Challenge? It's whenever Josh Eisenberg wants to do it. We need someone to be the mediator, and we absolutely could do a Seinfeld trivia episode of the Juice Box. I would be in. All we need is a guy to ask the questions, but the person that asks those questions have to have the exact answers right. Otherwise, Josh and myself will absolutely question, everything about it. So unless you have the exact answers correct, until that's done, we can't have the Seinfeld Trivia Challenge. But I'm here for it. Mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, or baked potatoes. In the order that I prefer them: mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, and sweet potatoes. My mom, of course, makes great mashed potatoes. Big fan of mashed potatoes. And I'm a fan of baked potatoes with steak, of course. Sweet potatoes aren't bad either. But just if you're asking me in order of what I prefer, I would absolutely think mashed potatoes first. Just soft, fluffy mashed potatoes are really unmatched. So give me mashed potatoes any day of the week. And then this is a tough one, though. Who are 3 active wrestlers who are overrated / do not deserve the praise, honors, accolades that are associated with them? I think the second part of that question, it's not that it's mean. It's just like, I don't really think many wrestlers aren't deserving of their spot necessarily. I would say when he was champion, when he was NWA champion, I would say Tyrus. Purely for the fact that he just can't move anymore. So I don't know if that was the right call. I get why he was champion. I just don't feel that it should have lasted as long as it did. And I was a fan of Brodus Clay. So, I'm not saying that the guy isn't talented. But at this stage of his career, I don't think he needed the NWA world title, for God's sake. Anybody else? Active wrestlers that really... Oh, man. It's just tough. Everybody that's really out there, I feel like has earned it. I know a lot of people are critical of Eddie Kingston for, the chop spots and stuff like that. You want me to be a real honest answer. Take Chris Jericho off TV for a couple of weeks or months. He's earned everything in his career. He's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer in every company. That doesn't mean he needs to be on TV every single week currently, So get him out of here. I wouldn't say he's overrated. He's just oversaturated on AEW TV, and I don't need to see him. I just don't. Could I give one more? Could I think of another one that is undeserving or... I don't know. Part of me wants to say Top Dollar, and it's not just because he's blocked me on Twitter because I made fun of the time where he tried to do a tope and botched it and fell over the ropes because he shouldn't have done a move like that in the first place. It was very dangerous and unsafe, and he almost killed himself doing that and took his neck off. But I don't really get the appeal of that. Look, Hit Row, or as I like to refer to them as Mid Row, Swerve Strickland was clearly the most important piece of that, and you see that as he's AEW champion. I'm not sure if everybody outside of that is, quote, overrated, but it's very clear that they were not as... They needed Swerve more than Swerve needed them, so that's where I'll end that. If you could take any wrestler from today's era and put them in the Attitude Era, who would it be, and why do you think they would succeed? Damn. Even a little earlier than the Attitude Era, I would have loved, and this is the WCW guy in me, give me Gunther versus Vader in like 95. Good Lord, would that have been amazing. Or put a guy like Mike Awesome in today's pro wrestling, with a guy like Dijak or Gunther. In the Attitude Era, though, specifically, I mean, LA Knight would probably have worked, but that's a derivative of the Attitude Era characters, so I'm not sure those are able to coexist like that. I think Braun Breaker could have been interesting in the Attitude Era, for sure. I'm sure Tiffany Stratton would have worked in the Attitude Era. That's an interesting one, I think a lot of guys... CM Punk probably... thinking about it in totality, CM Punk probably would have been the guy who would have thrived the most in the Attitude Era, so that'd have been something that I would have loved to have seen. And finally, can supernatural characters work in today's era, and will we ever have one ever to get to the status of The Undertaker? Although that was poorly written, Josh Cross, please, you have an edit button, utilize it. Yeah, they could, they did. Bray Wyatt. I think Bray Wyatt was as close as we were going to get to, and I hate to use the word aura because that's very overused in today's wrestling climate. Same with banger. But the aura of Bray Wyatt, his entrance at The Fiend making that character's debut at SummerSlam 2019 in Toronto, I would wager is as close to peak Undertaker, as Pat Patterson liked to say, gaga, that we've ever seen and we might ever see again. I know that we got a little bit of that with the Demon and Finn Balor, but that was every now and again, and it was never all the time. Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, I guess, specifically, was such a... I guess supernatural is the word. Larger than life, again, supernatural is the perfect term. Again, the entrance, his first appearance as The Fiend was as close to like Undertaker, ascending to the rafters at Rumble 94 or descending from the rafters at Survivor Series 96. Just the type of energy that brought, the insanity, the energy, the aura, the confusion of like, what really is this? Just the specialness of, if that's even a word, of Bray Wyatt, and the creativity. That's why it was so disheartening when he passed. Outside of course, the human being taken away from us so soon. A guy who's pretty much in the peak of his career. The selfish wrestling fan in me is like, man, The Undertaker was such a crazy, bigger-than-life character. For how long? Now he's doing podcasts. He's breaking kayfabe. Bray Wyatt was as close to that as we could have gotten, I feel. And I don't know if we'll ever see that again. I really don't know. But, yeah, that was Ask Juice. That was the Juice Box. Great episode, getting to talk all things AEW, WWE, Double or Nothing, King and Queen of the Ring, Dark Side of the Ring, ins and outs of Twitter, and Ask Juice. Glad we covered it all. Next week, as I said earlier, we should have 2 episodes in the feed, a King and Queen of the Ring prediction show, and a Double or Nothing prediction show. Whether it's me going solo, or it's Josh Eisenberg, or it's some other combination, rest assured there should be 2 episodes next week, and I'm very much looking forward to both of those. Memorial Day now getting multiple shows in the weekend. Cannot wait. Great weekend to be a wrestling fan. And as I always state, a great time to be a pro wrestling fan. So enjoy it. Looking forward to next week. We will discuss the predictions in addition to whatever happens in the Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, Collision, Rampage leading up to those shows next week. So stay tuned. As always, follow me on Twitter at Juicy Steen, on Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet. Subscribe to the Juice Box on YouTube at Juicy Steen. And of course, you can listen to the Juice Box, like I said, YouTube at Juicy Steen, on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts. And if you do listen to it there, leave a 5-star rating on iTunes. Write a review if you could. That'd be great as well. JuicySteen.podbean.com, Amazon Music. I think I've touched it all. So, as always, follow me there. Let's banter about wrestling. Next week, 2 shows of the Juice Box to satiate the thirst of you pro wrestling fans out there. So, without further ado, I'm Juice Springsteen. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Come back for 2 episodes next week. And I'll see you guys next week for another edition of The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.